kind of authoritarian structures in the world. They all ought to be challenged. Very few of them can resist that challenge. They survive mainly because they're not challenged. They're not really very strong. They look strong, but there's a point that was made by David Hume a couple hundred years ago, with it's worth bearing in mind. He raised a kind of paradox of power. He said, how does power sustain itself? He said, if you think about it, power is always in the hands of the people who are oppressed. It's in the hands of the governed. They really have power. And this is true of the most oppressive society, what we would call totalitarian society, as of the most free. Power is in the hands of the governed, so how come they submit themselves to the authority of others? He said, well, force is an element, but he said the real element is opinion. You have to control their opinion. Of course, he was in favor of it. You know, he's a Tory. So he says, well, what you have to do is make sure you control the opinion of the people, meaning make them believe, you know, make them saturate their minds with ideology, carry out what we call propaganda. Didn't have the term in those days. And control their opinion, and you got them. That means you change their aspirations, you restrict their aspirations to personal things, to commodities, to break down the natural bonds among people, force them to forget what they understand, you know, that they basically want freedom and independence and justice and so on. Every child understands that, so you have to work really hard to drive it out of their heads. And if you can drive it out of their heads and you control their opinion, then they'll submit. You know, and they'll submit whether you're a brutal state or a more free society. In fact, it's more important in the free societies. In the 20th century, when it, you know, in Hume's day, there wasn't much difference. Every society was absolutist. But as the societies differentiated over the years with popular struggles and, you know, winning the franchise and so on and so forth, the difference between the freer societies and the more, you know, like totalitarian or command societies became clearer, and a point began to be understood that Hume didn't talk about, and that is that control of opinion is much more important in the free societies. So like in, say, Soviet Russia, they didn't really care much what people thought. Franco Spain, let's say, you know, fascist state, people read much more broadly and widely than they do in the United States. I mean, like, say, I mean, it's true, in fact. You know, you go to a Marxist bookstore, you know. I mean, if you got out of line too much, okay, they send you to the torture chamber in downtown Madrid. But since there were techniques of control, just by force, there was not much, you know, wasn't much concern about what people thought. It's sort of believe what you like, we'll beat you over the head with a bludgeon, you know. When you get to the freer societies, there's a lot more concern with what people think. And that has been understood. That's part of the reason for the rise of the public relations industry in the United States. Public relations industry is a propaganda agency of business, which was, it's an American creation. You know, it was created in the early part of the century to try to, as they put it then, to control people's minds. And that's, you know, I don't know if they read Hume, but, you know, it's not a deep point. Anybody can understand it without reading Hume. They understood that unless you control people's minds, we're going to be in trouble. People's mind, you know, what was called in the business press, the greatest hazard facing industrialists is the rising political power of the masses. I'm quoting. I mean, you recognize that the business press is very Marxist, super Marxist. I mean, all the values are inverted, you know, but they believe in class struggle. They talk about the masses, you know, and beating down the masses and all that sort of thing. In fact, business press reads kind of like Maoist tracts, little red books and things, just with all the values reversed. And they understood that you've got to control people's opinion because, as Hume put it, power is in the hands of the governed, if they ever realize it. And if they realize it and they try to recognize what their own values are and pursue them, we're really going to be in trouble because there's not going to be any way to control people.